The Build Show today, basement waterproofing. We got a giant in-ground basement here in Austin, Texas, and we're gonna be doing a full fluid applied waterproofing system, as well as a dimple mat. The entire system is from Polyguard, one of our longtime Build Show sponsors. We're gonna show you all the steps. We got a lot to get into today. Today's Build Show is sponsored by Polyguard. Let's get going. Okay, step one on this waterproofing system is a little bit of cleanup and prep. After you strip your forms, you've got a lot of dust on this concrete, you've got some cold joints, and we need to clean that up. So my crew is over here today. We've got some brooms, we've got some wire brushes, some cup brushes, and we're really just doing some cleanup. And then Nathan is starting on step one after it's cleaned up, and that's this right here. We're gonna be putting a bead of this fluid applied sealant. This is Blue Barrier. And we're gonna be doing it at all the joints. So any cold joint on the project, which basically you can see we poured this lower part of the footing first and then these walls second. So we're cleaning up this cold joint and then we're applying a bead there. And then all these form ties, if you look closely in here, you can still see the metal connector that held the forms together. That's a possible spot for leakage. So we're gonna be filling up those form ties. You can see we just made a scraper out of a standard $1 scraper from the home center, cut that off on the sides and flattened it out. So now he can scrape these down. He can also use that on this joint right back here to make sure that that fluid applied is pushed into the joint. And then later you're gonna see us come back with the actual roll-on waterproofing. So let's let the guys get some work done today and we'll pick this up as we get to the next step. That's looking good, Johnny. Little liquid waterproofing right out of a can. Guys, let me introduce you to Greg Abel from Polyguard. Greg, thanks for joining us on the job site today. Give us a little tech help. This is our first time actually using your product. What's Johnny doing back here?
Johnny's applying Stretch Flex waterproofing membrane. It's an elastomeric membrane that's going to protect this foundation from moisture intrusion in the future.
I love it. Now, we prepped and got ready before we started today, and we saw this on the video from yesterday. We did that cold joint. You can see that's totally done around the entire perimeter of the house from our footing to our walls. And then we also hit all the form ties, and I'm assuming that this product's compatible with your Blue Barrier gap filler that we use, right, Greg?
Absolutely. They're both compatible with one another.
And so Johnny today is going to roll on, and actually we have quite a few guys to do this. I suspect we'll finish this foundation in a couple of hours, but that's not the only step, right?
That's not. I guess first and foremost, the team did a great job of prepping this wall by using the Blue Barrier gap filler. We then apply the Stretch Flex membrane to 30 mils today. We'll throw another coat on tomorrow to get it to 60 mils.
Yep.
That second coat's going to basically fill these spots that may be left and look honeycombish, if you will.
There's a couple minor honeycombs in that form, so it'll fill all those in. So we weren't worried about trying to hit every minor little spot with
That's correct.
The gap filler.
That's correct. The Stretch Flex will fill those voids.
Yeah.
And especially when we come in with that second coat. That second coat's going to do a very nice job of filling it and getting it to our mill thickness that we would prefer.
Yeah, no, sometimes when we use your products, we'll use a millage gauge. We're actually dipping this into a wet surface to see where the millage is. But this one seems like it's kind of self-gauging. Is that right, Greg?
Yeah, you know, we get that roller head loaded up nicely on that first coat and even on the second coat, and we can get to 60 mils pretty easily.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we're using a special roller head though, right? This isn't just any old size.
3/8 to 3/4 of an inch nap roller. I think what we have here today is a 1/2 inch nap.
Yep.
And as you can see, it's going on very smoothly. It actually, you know, a matter of 30 seconds, we've got 32, 36 square feet of product on already. So it goes very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. So Johnny's gonna get a ton of this done. And then we got a couple more guys. So for sure, even this big house, this big foundation, we'll get coat 1 on today, we'll let it dry, we'll come back for coat 2. Now talk to me about the next step. After we get this fully roller applied, we've got this kind of bed liner feeling material on the outside of the house. What's the next step?
The next step is to apply our drainage system. And Polyguard has a two-step system. We've got Total Flow, which is our perimeter drainage material. Comes in a 2 by 50-foot roll.
Okay.
It's tapered, so it's 1 inch wide at the base where it rests on the footer, and it tapers up to 1/4 of an inch at the top.
Okay.
That's going to allow bulk water as it moves down the drainage board to get out into your French drain. I believe you've got a French drain system that's going to be installed. Absolutely. So it's going to provide that much more release, like a valve, if you will, for that water to get out into the French drain and away from the structure.
Gotcha.
The second part to that is Polyflow 10. And the Polyflow 10 is a 4 by 50-foot piece of material that's 1/4 of an inch thick, continuous, and it marries up to the Total Flow on the top edge, and it will protect the balance of the wall.
Yeah.
So we'll have dimple board all the way up to grade level on this.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I think of dimple mats, I almost think of a rain screen like we'd use above ground, right? That rain screen, when I put that on before a siding, leaves an air gap, so if any water gets past there, it just has this drainage plane that just shoots down. Now, below grade's a different story, right? We're gonna be backfilling this foundation, and so we're making sure that we're not challenging this waterproofing.
Correct.
With rocks or with other penetrations that might poke it or scar it. But we're also making sure that if we had a massive, 2-inch rainstorm, that as those waters rise, the sump pump can take it out, and we don't have that hydrostatic pressure forcing its way into something that's a problem here, right?
That's correct. And part of our drainage system, Matt, is we've got a landscape fabric, which is on the outboard side of the drainage board, which actually protects the drainage board and creates that channel that you're referring to for that water to move through. So any backfill material won't get into the drainage portion of the panel.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, it's ultimately a belt and suspenders approach. This liquid waterproofing, awesome. Does a great job, but we still need that dimple mat. We don't use one or the other or just use them separately. We need both to make a total system, to make a truly waterproof foundation for the lifetime of this house.
Absolutely.
I do want to make a mention about a logo and brand change for Polyguard. For many, many years, you guys saw this logo on my channel, Polywall. And Polyguard actually started that brand, what, 6-7 years ago, right?
Yeah, 7 years ago.
Where you guys were taking your commercial products and said, hey, a lot of builders like me and my friends were using these commercial products. Why don't we make a residential brand? So they came out with this Polywall name, and they've been a channel sponsor for, like I said, 7-8 years now. But Greg, this name's going away, right?
It is. We will phase out the Polywall name. In that process, you'll see a few products as we phase them out still under that brand. But the overall intent is to move everything over to our Polyguard products, parent company branding.
Got it. And for people who don't know Polyguard as a brand, tell me about you guys. How old is your company?
Yeah.
Where you're making your products, that sort of thing.
We're just about ready to celebrate our 70-year anniversary.
How about that? That's
absolutely.
Awesome.
And products are made right here in the state of Texas, in Ennis and also Corsicana.
It's like 2 hours north of me.
Absolutely. And with this rebranding, same products, same people, same stuff, just under the new name.
You guys make some really, really good products. And besides this, you've probably seen my videos with that silver peel and stick that I use on almost all my projects. That's the, what's it called now? We changed it.
UV240.
UV240. I used to call it Illumiflash, but it's now UV240. So some slight brand and naming changes. You're going to see that Polywall sunsetted, but Polyguard, old company, employee-owned company, really, really good people, and bomber products. Greg, thanks for your friendship, my friend.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all, we're back at the foundation. My crew did an amazing job on the foundation waterproofing. Basically, when we finished up with the roll-on, there was a couple of spots, maybe some honeycombing, that we came back and did some additional filling with some sausage tubes of the BBGF product. That's that fluid applied. But this step right here is a critical step. This is our dimple mat, which is ultimately going to make sure that we don't have hydrostatic pressure challenging that waterproofing that we did. Now we're in Austin, Texas. We're going to insulate from the inside of this foundation, but if you were doing exterior insulation, you'd put that on first on top of your waterproofing, but then this layer you're going to use really no matter what. And again, this is basically a plastic material that looks egg crated, dimple matted, with a filter fabric on top, so that between these two layers, now any water that comes up against this foundation is going to find an air gap, and it's going to fall down that air gap and be whisked away with that drain that's going to be at the footer down here. Now the idea behind this fabric is, this is called filter fabric, which means that it'll filter out the dirt, and that dirt is going to stay on the front side of this. The water is going to come into that air gap that's basically made on this dimple right here, and then it's going to get whisked away. Now if you check out the specs on this online, it's crazy how much water on this Polyflow 10. The flow rate on this is 140 gallons per minute per square foot. So we've got a lot of ability to move water away from this foundation and make sure that that waterproofing is not challenged. Now, if you're gonna do this process in just a matter of a couple of days, you really could get away with just using the quick grip adhesive to hold this on the foundation. But because we're actually in a little longer of a process, and I've got the super tall, like 14-foot foundation here, we're probably gonna be 2 weeks or so between the time we install this and when we actually backfill. We've actually held it in place with some nails. Now we bought a Hilti nail gun, and we're using 1 3/8" Hilti nails. And we actually bought this really neat fastener. This is not by Polyguard, this is by Delta. They call it the Delta Fastener. It's basically a washer, for lack of a better term, that kind of fits really nicely with the dimple mat. And you can see we ran that on a pattern at the very top of the wall. Now we did pin in a few places the Polyflow 10 as well with a ramset gun because we ran it vertically. Had we run it horizontally, and again, had we backfilled sooner, we might not have needed to do that. But I'm not as worried about a few nails in this system, because ultimately this is a belt and suspenders approach. And the whole idea behind this dimple mat is to make sure that that waterproofing is not challenged with hydrostatic pressure. You know, we don't want this foundation to turn into a bathtub that holds water, and then we try and put a cup down into that bathtub and it's holding out that pressure. We want to make sure that water is whisked away down to that footing drain and then pumped out, so that this air gap is maintained here. If that air gap is maintained, a few nails through that waterproofing is not going to be a problem in the long term. Now we do want to make sure we're using best practices though. We want to backfill this with rock. We want to do a really good job of doing that footing drain. As I mentioned earlier, check out that video. But in the long run, these at the top of the wall mean that now we're good to go for backfilling. This is basically like a curtain hanging down right now until we've backfilled. Now at the very end of the job though, as we're backfilling, we're gonna come back and put a term bar in. A term bar is basically a strip of metal that will go at the very top of this Polyflow 10, and we'll make sure that dirt is not getting behind the dimple mat. We're gonna probably terminate that maybe right at grade or 5 inches below grade, something like that. And then we'll probably also use a bead of some BBGF at the very top of that term bar as well, just to make sure that water slash dirt is not getting in behind this. The last thing I want to mention on this product from the spec sheets that I thought was really interesting is the compressive strength is ridiculous on this Polyflow 10. It's 11,000 pounds per square foot. So when we backfill this, we're not going to be worried about this getting crushed. It's going to be able to withstand that pressure as we backfill. Guys, big thanks to Polyguard for sponsoring today's video. As you can see, my crew did a top-notch job over here. I'm really proud of these guys. This is going to be a waterproof foundation for the life of this house. Go check out our other videos with Polyguard. They've been a long-time show sponsor, probably actually my longest build show supporter of me on this channel. And I'll have a link to those guys in the description below. If you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.